Why do you feel distant from people who matter? There are people in your life who matter to you. You care about them. You think about them. You don't want to lose them. And yet, sometimes you feel far away from them, not physically, emotionally. You sit in the same room. You talk. You laugh at the right moments. But something feels missing. The closeness you used to feel isn't there anymore. The ease, the warmth, the sense of being truly connected. And it's confusing because nothing obvious is wrong. There was no big argument, no betrayal, no dramatic ending. So you wonder what changed. You tell yourself, maybe I'm just tired. Maybe this is normal. Maybe relationships are supposed to feel like this after a while. But deep down, you know that's not the whole story. Because the distance doesn't feel neutral. It feels heavy. It feels like you're holding something back. Even when you don't know what it is. You want to be present. You want to be open. You want to feel close again. But when the moment comes, you don't quite get there. You listen, but part of you is somewhere else. You respond, but without much emotion. You show up, but only halfway. And later you might feel guilty. Why am I like this? Why can't I just be normal? Why do I feel cold when I don't want to be? Most people assume this kind of distance means something is wrong with the relationship. Those feelings are fading. That interest is disappearing. That love is weakening. But very often, that's not true. In many cases, the distance has very little to do with the other person. It has to do with what's happening inside you. Because emotional closeness requires energy. It requires presence. It requires attention. It requires vulnerability. And when you've been mentally exhausted for a long time, those things become harder to access. Not impossible, just harder. So you begin to protect your energy without realizing it. You speak less about what you're feeling. You keep conversations lighter. You avoid topics that might go deep. Not because you don't care, but because going deep feels tiring, risky. Like opening a door you don't have the strength to walk through right now. Over time, this protection becomes a habit. You learn how to stay connected on the surface, while staying guarded underneath. And from the outside, everything looks fine. But inside, you feel slightly alone, even with people you love. That's the quiet distance most people never talk about. Why you feel distant from people who matter. There are people in your life who matter to you. You care about them. You think about them. You don't want to lose them. And yet, sometimes you feel far away from them. Not physically, emotionally. You sit in the same room, you talk, you laugh at the right moments. But something feels missing. The closeness you used to feel isn't there anymore. The ease, the warmth, the sense of being truly connected. And it's confusing, because nothing obvious is wrong. There was no big argument, no betrayal, no dramatic ending. So you wonder what changed. You tell yourself, maybe I'm just tired. Maybe this is normal. Maybe relationships are supposed to feel like this after a while. And this is the part most people misunderstand. When you notice emotional distance, your first instinct is often to judge yourself. You think, something is wrong with me. I'm becoming cold. I'm losing my ability to connect. But distance is rarely a personality change. It's usually a signal. A quiet message from your internal world saying, I'm overwhelmed. I'm tired. I've been protecting myself for too long. And once you begin to see distance as information, instead of failure, something important shifts. You stop fighting yourself. You start listening. One of the first signs you're ready to reconnect is simply noticing the distance without panic. You observe your reactions. You notice when conversations feel heavy. You notice when you want to withdraw. You notice when you feel emotionally numb. And instead of forcing yourself to be different, you become curious. Because curiosity creates space, and space allows honesty. Many people believe that rebuilding connection means suddenly becoming open again, sharing everything, feeling everything, returning to how things used to be. But real reconnection is much quieter than that. It begins with small moments of presence, listening just a little more closely, allowing a pause instead of rushing to respond, letting yourself feel even a small emotional reaction without immediately shutting it down. Connection doesn't return in dramatic breakthroughs. It returns in micro moments, a slightly more genuine response, a moment of eye contact that lasts 1 second longer, a small truth you normally wouldn't say. And at first, these moments can feel uncomfortable because emotional openness after a long period of distance can feel unfamiliar, almost like using a muscle that hasn't been active in a while. You may feel awkward, slow, unsure of what to say. That's normal. Reconnection is not a performance. It's a gradual re-entry into emotional presence. Another important step is acknowledging your limits honestly. You don't have to be emotionally available all the time. You don't have to force deep conversations when your energy is low. In fact, forced vulnerability often creates more distance. Instead, you can say simple truths like, "I'm a bit tired today, but I'm glad we're talking." "I don't have the right words yet, but I'm here." "I care about this. I just need a little time to process." Honesty builds safety, and safety allows closeness to return naturally. It's also important to remember that emotional distance is rarely one-sided. The other person may also be protecting themselves. They may sense your withdrawal and respond by pulling back too, not out of rejection, but uncertainty. So sometimes, the most powerful step is simply signaling warmth again. A small check-in message, a sincere question, a moment of undivided attention. These gestures may seem small, but emotionally, they are bridges, and bridges matter more than dramatic conversations, because deep connection is built from consistent signals of safety. Another shift happens when you stop expecting connection to feel intense all the time. Many people believe closeness should always feel warm, exciting, alive. But real connection has quiet seasons, moments of calm presence, moments of simple coexistence, moments where nothing special happens. And yet you feel comfortable when you release the expectation that connection must always feel strong. You allow it to exist in softer forms, and often that softness is where emotional safety grows again. You also begin to understand that distance is not always permanent. It is a state, and states can change. Your nervous system can relax, your emotional capacity can expand, your sense of openness can return, not instantly, but gradually, through repeated experiences of safety, through conversations that feel manageable, through shared silence that feels calm, through interactions where you don't feel pressured to be more than you are in that moment. And perhaps the most important shift of all is learning to reconnect with yourself first. Because when you feel emotionally distant from others, you are often distant from your own feelings too. You may be ignoring exhaustion, avoiding disappointment, suppressing frustration, minimizing sadness. So part of rebuilding connection is gently asking yourself, what am I actually feeling right now? What have I been carrying alone? What have I stopped expressing, even to myself? When you reconnect internally, external connection becomes easier because emotional presence starts from within, and slowly you may notice small changes. Conversations feel slightly more natural, moments feel a little warmer, silence feels less heavy. You begin to laugh more genuinely, listen more openly, respond more honestly, not because you forced yourself to change, but through patience, awareness, and small, consistent steps back toward connection. Maybe the distance you feel isn't a sign that something is broken. Maybe it's a signal. That part of you has been carrying too much for too long. And closeness doesn't always disappear all at once. Sometimes, it just waits for you to feel safe enough to return to it. Not perfectly, not all at once, just one honest moment at a time, soft pause. And maybe that moment starts sooner than you think.